friends. Well, it had to happen, didn't it? The weather, that is, has turned really nasty. Last week it was freezing cold. Today, by the way, is Sunday. I was up here yesterday on Saturday and I was frozen solid all day. And it's going to slow down the things that I want to do on the RT because paint takes forever, especially oil-based paint to go off. And if you watch these, you'll know that already. So, this week's episode, we're back to prepping again. I've got to finish off that area underneath the staircase, and the reason I've got to do that is I want to put the wiring back in, and at the moment, until the stuff under the staircase is finished, I can't put the conduit back in, I can't rewire the thing. Once that's done, then I can get all the saloon lights working downstairs, and you know, we can start making some progress. I've still got stuff to do on the outside of the bus. I'm doing some work on that emergency exit window upstairs. You might remember that I've now resprayed most of the back of the bus, and the back window, when you open it up, is what's called the shut. So if you've got a car, you open your door up, you notice that that's the same colour as the rest of the vehicle. Well, exactly the same with this. It's quite a large area, funnily enough. So I'm rubbing that down and getting that ready for a repaint. And yeah, what else can I do? It's really miserable out there. Okay, so let's see how we get on this weekend, shall we?
Yeah, it's very evident the weather's turning against us now, but at least it wasn't as cold as it was the previous weekend. A really nice sunset on Saturday, but sadly Sunday it was wet and horrid. But anyway, it's great to see Peter Figg. He wanted me to give him a hand with his RM, and I've got this at the very end, so look forward to that. Right, you might recall from a previous edition, I put all these panels back on the bus. My very good friend, Alan Brown, cut them for me, copied from the original panels. And when we were doing the last video, I noticed something and I thought, oh, that's interesting. The panels are slightly oversized. Now, I gave Alan all the original ones that came off, but unfortunately I didn't get them back. And what I tend to use is I use them as a pattern. So I can look at where things were, like the little reflective disc and stuff like that. And unfortunately, as I hadn't got the pattern, I didn't quite know where they went. And therefore, this panel was oversized. But while I was doing the last video and editing it, I noticed, I thought, hang on a minute, if I push that panel back up there into the underneath the other panel, it's going to work like a roof tile, doesn't it? So that's probably how it should have been. So I basically undid it, but the problem with doing that is that little cutout for the indicator, that now is too sort of shallow, or whatever you want to call it. So I had to cut that short, but my little cutter was playing up, and every time I plugged it into the mains, bang, all the lights went out. Right, so having removed that panel, I was going to keep trying my little cutter. I'd taken it home, dried it out, I put the airline through it. I even had sort of tried to warm it up with a heat gun to see if it would stop whatever this damp was causing it to go pop. But anyway, this next clip, I have moved forward from what would be episode 108. So I moved that forward just to show you what was going on with this cutter. Now we get plunged into darkness. Oh, well, never mind. It was worth a try. Right, anyway, so as soon as that was a sneak clip from the following week, I think you'll find we're going to come back to that. Anyway, let's get on with the next bit. Right, so welcome to the inside of the RT. This is as far as I got 30 years ago. That's why I'd done the wreck scene. I didn't put the little bits back because I was going to work around that window frame. There's a little bit of like a flashing which goes just round on the inside. You can just about see it there, and it needs all renewing, and I'm going to have to do it at some point. It's going to need to be done. But anyway, as well as finishing off all the other bits I should have done upstairs and didn't get around to doing it. So this is the emergency exit frame. What you might notice, I've already started rubbing down that edge there. And it's really actually quite sweet because I've seen buses, I bought a number of them over the years, and quite often when they respray them, whatever colour was the original outside, they don't really bother opening the doors up, these emergency exit doors. And somebody at Northfleet has gone to the hassle, they painted this at Northfleet in 1977, of actually sort of opening that up, masking it all down and painting it. And I assume it was done in hand paint, because that's how I'm going to have to do it, in hand paint. So anyway, I'm going to get on with rubbing this down. It's about as exciting as it gets, frankly, isn't it? So upstairs on the RT, rubbing down that frame. Right, so after half a day's of effort, this is what it all looks like. You can see a kaleidoscope of colours there. You can also see that little, that sort of flashing or beading or whatever I need to change. Yeah, so we go up that pillar and then we go across here, and you can see a bit more of that wreck scene from inside that's going to need to be sorted out at some point in the future. And then down there. So that is all now ready for the dreaded paintbrush, the bit I like doing. Right, because I've gone back to bare wood in a few places, I've got to use wood primer on it. It doesn't really matter, it goes over the old paint quite nicely. You might wonder why I'm actually painted cack-handed. It's because I'm trying to do it for the benefit of the camera and I don't get my arm or my head in the way. So I'm doing it rather cack-handed. I am doing it fairly straight as well, because I'm not using lots of masking tape. If I was spraying, I'd have to sort of mask all this up, the outside of the bus, the inside of the bus. So it really is a lot easier. And this paint, this is like a primer paint. It's really beautiful primer paint. It's really nice. But anyway, once I've gone all the way around that frame, I then need to paint it green. But obviously I've got to let it go off a couple of days, so so it's not going to happen today. But there we are. Me putting some grey primer around the frame. Like I say, even more excitement, isn't it? But I do enjoy painting, and I will point out, obviously, the weather is crap outside, as a result of which, in the summertime, this would have probably dried in about, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours, because of water-based paint. But unfortunately, in this, the damp and cold, I need to leave at least a day before I can attempt to put anything over the top of it. So yeah, there's the bad effects of the winter, I'm afraid. And I was doing some painting the following episode, and it is very, very noticeable how much the cold slows things down. So we'll probably come to that in episode 108. There we are. So there's a bit of grey going on the frame. This is an area we don't venture into often. It's the area underneath the stairs. What you're looking at is some of the components that should be there but are not. Now that sort of J-shaped piece of conduit, that is what carries all of the cables for the saloon lighting. Now I've run the loom, as you're aware, if you've watched previous episodes, you know I've done all the loom, but I need to get this back into the bus, and before I do that I want to paint the area underneath the stairs. So this is not going to be a nice job, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't looking forward to it, but we need to do it nonetheless. Firstly, I'll point out it's not normally this colour. The inside of the conductor's area was originally chocolate brown, and where my arm is now, there's a little sort of slot for time cards and stuff like that, and that is where I'm filming through, and I've removed that. It's like a little tray that fits in there. So unless you remove that, you're never going to see this anyway, including that little chip where someone's taken a chip out the wood. So I don't know how that happened. But there's also, and credit to the guys at Orginal who used to have to climb in here, but I couldn't imagine anyone having to climb. It's what a horrible job to do. But anyway, they've probably got the youngest person and sort of the apprentices. They go in there and paint it. But there was quite a few runs, especially towards the top, where they'd runs in the paint. And I did my best to rub them down. What you actually see here, this is a filler primer. It's that same horrible stuff that messed up my gun a few weeks back, where it actually set solid in the gun, thus ruining it. So I was really careful with it this time round. You can also just about see, just in the edge of shot there's a little bit of wood that protrudes. That is the mounting for the switches for the saloon lighting. So yeah, there I am in there. I will point out, by the way, it was freezing cold. You can tell because I've got my overalls on, I've got one of my old shirts on, I've got a couple of woolly pulleys there which you can't see. My new overalls as well, funny enough, they the following week, the next episode, the old ones will make a re-emergence. So it just goes to show how cold it was, but actually in there it was quite nice and warm. You can see that conduit across the bottom there. That needs to connect up to the conduit you saw earlier. Right, you saw earlier on the top of that wooden frame. So in the picture on the left, that's what this stuff on the right hand side mounts to. The first thing is that little box. It is actually right way up, but obviously facing away from us. So that gets attached onto the top bit that protrudes. And then the little sort of thing on the left hand side of that picture on the right hand side is the flap that sits over the fuses, and the two little cut out holes are for the 4 switches, if I remember rightly, or 2 switches that protrude through there. But you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fuses in there. The other thing you've got, which comes out of that, is this little lamp holder which sits just to one side of that little ensemble, and it was for like I think like a wander lead, so that you could plug into that and then you get yourself a light bulb and, you know, wander around the bus with 24-volt bulb or whatever, all connected up. But I did originally think when I first bought the bus that they had put it there because you could lift up the flap and do some work on the batteries, but of course the moment you disconnect the batteries and you've got no lighting, so it's not going to work, is it? But anyway, I'm putting that all back. Also just below that is a bell push, and here's something else I found which I never knew was on the RT. Right, did you spot it? Buried just up in that little corner there, on the edge of the wood, is a coat hanger for the conductors. I never knew it was there. Obviously this area was like the black hole of Calcutta in there. It was, this grey obviously shows everything up and you go, oh, I can see what's there now. But when it was originally dark brown, it was just, well, you couldn't see in there. So anyway, I tried to rub that down, and then I thought, oh, you know, sod it, I'll remove it and I'll do it off the bus, which is what I ended up doing. There's only a couple of wood screws that held it in place, but I thought it was really quite a little sweet addition. You can also see just on there, you see that bit of metal that sticks out. That's a bracket, and that protects the back of the little slot that the conductor would put you know, their time cards and other bits and pieces in. There was also a hole in the bottom of it as well, so that if you stuck rubbish in there, basically a bit of old, I don't know, sweet paper or whatever, it would just flutter its way back down through the hole at the bottom of the thing and then land where the conductor's sort of area where you put pushchairs and things. So yeah, so there we are. So I thought that was a little feature which I didn't know, and it's a bit of a thing of discovery that you keep finding these things and going, oh, I never knew that was there. So there we are. There's another little piece that, if you do have an RT, friends, now you know you've got a coat hanger in there. Right, so having rubbed it down in there and also vacuumed out some of it, you can see the vacuum cleaner just there on the right hand side of the shop, it was time to get the air line out and to blast all the dust out from the crevices. I also needed to do a wet rub down on it as well at some point, although sadly I was hoping to do it this weekend, the wet work, but things sort of overtook me a little bit. But anyway, there I am, blowing all the dust everywhere just to make the barn even more dusty. If you wonder why my barn is covered in dust, this is the reason why. Right, but before we leave this, I'll just point a couple of things out to you. You can see that bit of conduit in there that connects up to the bit I want to put in. And just behind my back at the moment, there's a sheet of metal. There should be a bell push on there, the 2 wires hanging down that you can see for the bell push. I've opened up the flap that leads down into the batteries. But anyway, that I did. I took that out. I removed it when I strengthened the bulkhead for the battery isolator and the boost socket. So I sprayed it off the bus up to the point of final coat, which is why you notice in some of the shots it's actually been masked up. but there we are, and you can see that little bit of conduit. You could see it earlier on that ran across the bottom. So yeah, there we are. That's the area underneath there. And also, oh, by the way, before we leave, you may have noticed earlier on that flap is new-ish. I remade that about 30 odd years ago when the original one just collapsed. That just water had got to it. So anyway, there we are. So that's that, ready for its next episode. Right, I was really looking forward to this. This here on the left-hand side is Keith Ward. Those of you in transport circles might be aware of Keith for his photography. He takes photographs of trains mainly. We have one thing in common. We both used to work for London Underground. Keith left at the beginning of this year, I understand. He was a Northern Line train operator, but also acted as a train instructor as well. So new drivers will be shown the ropes by Keith. He's extremely experienced. He's got a lot of knowledge about London Underground and London transport in general. And now he's retired, he thought he would start a new project. And he has purchased this bus. This is SMS 753, which was a Harrow wheeled vehicle for all of its life. Now, Harrow wheeled is not far from me, and they've had a number of different types of buses over the years, but the SMSs, I can't remember how long they lasted for, but this one apparently spent all of its life at one garage. And if you know anything about buses sort of after about 1968, 69, the DMSs, the SMSs, the MBSs and all those vehicles that came as a sort of something that would have replaced the RTs and then the Routemasters, sadly, they all struggled in London. Other operators bought them and didn't have any problems, but when they were in London they had all sorts of problems with them. A number ended up in Malta, I think some as far-flung as Mauritius. So, yep, and they didn't have Mauritius, bearing in mind, it's baking hot in Mauritius and Malta, and they didn't have all sort of problems we had with them over here. So, yeah, absolute congratulations to Keith for buying this vehicle. He is looking at bringing it into the barn opposite me that you've seen before, and it'd be really nice to see him there. And obviously we spent on the Saturday, we spent ages chatting about London Underground people and stuff like that, as a result of which I got bugger all done on the RT. But it is, I do point this out, and I know I've said this before, it's a social element that matters. And yeah, great to see Keith, and I do hope that he can eventually bring us this vehicle, and yeah, and we can have even more longer chats in the barn. So let's move on, shall we? Right, that Routemaster that you see in back of shot quite frequently is 1804, and it's owned by my friend Peter Figg. It's the only bus in my barn which isn't one of mine, but Peter, yeah, I call him an occasional visitor. It's not fair to say he doesn't come up their barn a lot, but anyway, but he was a little bit concerned with winter approaching, that he needed to top up his antifreeze. So he popped up with this this little blue container of antifreeze, which surprised me a little bit because there wasn't a lot in it, and it was also a little bit thin looking. So anyway, he asked me if I would top up his antifreeze for him. Now I've got some sound on this. It was just picked up by the camera itself. But anyway, I'll try and jump about. So where I've got sound, we'll use the sound. And then when I haven't, I'll just fill you in with a few more facts in a mo.
It was so cold up here yesterday. I mean, I was frozen to the core.
Yeah. I didn't leave the house yesterday. I didn't leave the house yesterday.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't come out here again. I couldn't wait now. Okay. Which one are we talking? Are you sure that's? Oh, it is antifreeze. I'm wondering whether we go for dropping out. Does this use a lot of water, Pete?
It does, yes.
Oh, okay, so we might get away with it then.
Yeah, I topped up my RT a couple of winters ago. It had antifreeze in it all over since all the time it's been parked up in there 30 odd years. But I dropped a little bit of water out and popped some more in. So it's exactly what Peter wants to do, but we can't get all of it in.
Hold that.
So I quickly swapped it around. I was holding the rad cap in one hand, and it was making life a little bit difficult. But anyway, I couldn't get all of it in, unfortunately.
Ooh.
We didn't get much in there, did we?
I'm going to come out of there.
What I think we do, start her up, right, and then we'll see if the water drops down. If necessary, Pete, we'll drop some water out.
Yep.
Okay, go on, off you go.
You know what, that's not bad for a bus that I don't think he started it up probably in about 2.5 months. The last time he started it up and took it out was when he went down to the Swanley bus rally and he ran it on a little service down there. But it's maintained by my friend Austin Blackburn, who you saw a little while ago. He takes it down to Austin to do a little bit of work on it. So there it is, running away, and hopefully getting that water in there circulated around with that little tiny amount of antifreeze, but we're going to need to drop some water out of it because clearly that amount of antifreeze is not going to do a lot of good to the plant. So anyway, you know when you get into a job you think I really shouldn't have got involved in this. No, actually it's wrong to say that, but I was put me back a little bit on the RT because I was hoping to rub down that area and finish that area off underneath the platform. So it got pushed back to another week, unfortunately. But I do like to help Peter, and we all help each other out when we're up there. You can see how cold it is. You can see that when I'm talking to Peter. Now, what are we looking at? Now, you may not have noticed this. On an RM, there's this little flap at the front, and there's these pipes here. Now, the engine had been running for about sort of 20 odd minutes, and I had hoped that we would have started to get some heat up there. What they do is, just at the front of the bus, and this is one thing I will say on a Routemaster that was poorly designed, is the saloon heating, which is why when they refurbished them, they put them on the floor of the RM, which was a much more sensible arrangement. And it's the Achilles heel, unfortunately, of an RM. I'll come to that in a minute. So what I'm trying to do, this is the top of the water system, and I had noticed that those pipes were stone cold, and they should by now have had a little bit of heat going in. And I did ask Peter if he did check to make sure that the switch inside the saloon was switched on. And just up in there is like a little thermostat. I think it's called the Ranco unit, and they are prone to failure. But anyway, so what I wanted to do was to see if I could bleed out, because quite often these airlocks is at the very top of the water system on the Routemaster, and if I can get a flow of water up there, which means I would have got squirted with warm water, then we know at least we've got circulation all around the bus. But it was going to prove to be fruitless, unfortunately. Those connections have not been off in years, and I didn't want to push it to the point where I actually broke something, and then Peter wouldn't have been best pleased with me. So anyway, let me just run you through this heater system on the RM. It's forced air heating, which is all very good if you're in the country in an RMC or an RCL and you're belting along in the country lanes at 30 or 40 mile an hour in the cold. And what happens is the air passes into the bus through that little grill just underneath the destination blind box. It then passes through there's a little radiator in there. And then it passes through that, and then there's some ducting that goes upstairs to do the ones at floor level and then the ones just underneath the window. And then there's another duct that goes into the lower saloon and it points out just above the flywheel cover. So that's how it works. Now there is, because when you take the bus out the garage in the morning, the heaters don't work. So to stop a nasty chill flowing through the saloon of the bus, the driver's got a little cord that he can pull. So if you ever look in the cab of an RM, you might see this little cord hanging down. And what that does is that pulls the blind down. There's a little blind in there that blocks off, effectively, the airflow through into the bus. I've no doubt if the driver forgot to do it when he came out on a cold morning from the bus garage, the bus conductor would be banging furiously on that little window behind him and said, "Oi, I'm freezing at the back here, pull that thing down." But there we are. But it was, in essence, it wasn't a good idea. The RT heating system was a later modification, and mine was fitted on 3461 in, I think, about 1966. But obviously they didn't have any heating. The cab had heating, but the saloon had no heating whatsoever on RTs. So they were a later modification. And what they did was they put this little electric fan motor upstairs, and basically that's what heated the RT, and it worked very well. And for some reason, bearing in mind that the Routemasters were, I suppose, designed in the 1950s, but it wasn't a good idea. And you're sitting in Oxford Street, traffic's not moving, there is no saloon heating, full stop. There's no fan in there to pull the heat through. There is nothing. So if you're stuck in traffic in the middle of nowhere, sadly you've got no heating. So that's the RM's heating system. The only thing I can think of at the moment, I'll think of something else one day, but it's the only thing I can think on the RM that they really didn't get right. Right, so let's leave it there, shall we? While I'm trying to see why there's hardly any water coming through this. It's going to be a job for another day. So what I advised Peter to do was to get some more antifreeze, and we'll drop some more water out of it and put some more antifreeze in next time. That is a wrap on edition 107. I'm about a week and a half behind on editing these, as you might have gathered, because I was able to include something else in from the next edition in this one. The other good thing is I did manage to sort out the sound system issues. I bought a new microphone and had to spend half a day reading up how it works. But anyway, I've got a new microphone now, so we should be back to sound. So thank you very much for watching. I look forward to doing the next one. And YouTube, as I always say, will find you something else that might be a bit more interesting than this one. So thanks very much, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.